All right, everybody, welcome back to the TXRF podcast and what is officially episode 7. Today I have potentially a lengthy episode, as in more so than normal, probably over 30 minutes, especially if I keep over explaining everything. But today we're going to be discussing the best players in Texas Rangers franchise history, which for those unaware also includes the Washington Senators from 1961 to 1971. So you will see some of those names pop up here. But this was inspired by a post that I made today, which is October 19th at the time of recording, of Michael Young's birthday. I don't know how old he was turning, but that's besides the point. Anyway, I posted that, and then it got me thinking, who are the best players, or who's the consensus best player in franchise history? And I put up a little question poll thing where you can submit a response to it. And that further inspired me to make this episode. So I'm going to be starting off with some fan submissions. And then I'm going to go through a lot of baseball reference pages here. I got what numbers the franchise has retired, because usually that's a pretty big indicator of if they're valued by the franchise. The top 24 players by wins above replacement, which I don't know why they only do 24 on Baseball Reference, but that's what it is. And for those unaware as well, WAR is just wins above replacement. It's kind of this stat that was made up in recent years to calculate a player's value across eras to kind of comparatively do that in different generations. Then I'm going to look at the top 10 batting and pitching in the franchise for both single season and career. I'm going to look at some of the Hall of Famers that have been inducted, and also which ones specifically went in as a Ranger. And then I'm going to wrap things up with who I personally consider to be the Rangers / Senators GOAT. So that was a lot, and that's why I think this is going to be a long episode today. But I hope you all stick around for the whole thing and enjoy it. So getting right into it with the fan-submitted picks, there were actually a couple people who put up a top 3 list because it is very difficult to pick just one. I know for the haters out there, you're going to be like, oh, we don't even have 3 good players. But trust me, they have had at least 3 very good all-time players. And we're going to start with a response from MLB Source 2021. This is all on Instagram, by the way, if you're interested in seeing who commented on this. But they said number 1, Nolan Ryan, number 2, Michael Young, and number 3, Ian Kinsler or Josh Hamilton. That is an interesting one because I think, I guess I'll get into this later as well, but I think the top 3 has to include one of either Beltre or Pudge at the very least. But it's tough. I'm telling y'all, like, if you've been paying attention to the franchise at all, it's more than you think. Then another person who did a top 3 list was Texas4_life, and they said number 1, Michael Young, number 2, Josh Hamilton, and number 3, Pudge. Interesting amount of Josh Hamilton submissions. The last person who did a 3-person list was Miguel Castro.tx, and they said a 3-way tie for Pudge, Young, and Beltre for me. Another very interesting list. I mean, it is tough, guys. I don't want to sound like a broken record already, like 5 minutes into this podcast, but it really is tougher than you think. So looking at some of the other submissions, though, a handful of Beltres, a good amount of Josh Hamiltons, couple Nolan Ryans, couple Michael Youngs, couple Pudges. I'm seeing a couple Juan Gonzalez's as well. We will definitely be getting into that. And then Riley_KKG said Jim Aducci, no doubt. Amen, man. So those are the fan submissions. I got about 340 people saw the story so far in like 10 hours. So I thought that was a good enough sample size to kind of get an idea of what people think. So I wasn't going to go crazy with it and like throw the data into Excel or something and run all these calculations. But those are the ones that y'all submitted to my page. Moving on now to the numbers that the team has retired. It's not too many, but in the past couple years, they have added a couple. I don't know the order. I can only assume based on when everyone retired. But of course, Jackie Robinson is Universal MLB. Nolan Ryan, Ivan Pudge Rodriguez, Michael Young, Johnny Oates, and Adrian Beltre. Now, the interesting one is Johnny Oates. He was, of course, not a player, but a manager of the first team that won the AL West. I think that was 94 or 96. I am not entirely sure. And actually, I think it was 96 now that I mention it. I can probably take a look at the baseball reference page since I'm on it. But once again, besides the point, he was a manager and he was great, so they had to, of course, retire his number. But the others there, Nolan Ryan, I mean, none of these guys need an introduction, but Nolan Ryan, one of the best pitchers of all time, one of the most durable players of all time, pitched longer than I've been alive, so you can try to do the math on that one. But the man was insane. He gets criticized a lot for having like the win-loss. He has almost 300 losses, but also 300 wins. And, his whip is above average, I guess, or technically below average in that sense. But, I mean, the dude was on a whole other level. He pitched from 1966 to 1993, 27 years. Of course, the MLB strikeout record. And he also does have the MLB record for most home runs allowed or rather, most hits allowed per 9 innings. I don't want to say it was because he was a contact pitcher, but it was because he was not afraid to attack the zone. I mean, the strikeouts, of course, the big thing for him. Multiple 300 strikeout seasons, almost a 400 strikeout season in 1973 for the California Angels at the time. And he went all the way to 46 to a couple no-hitters with Texas. No doubt a number that should be retired, and of course it was. Next is Pudge, who is actually the team leader in wins above replacement at exactly 50.0. Not much else to say about Pudge either. I mean, he's one of the best catchers of all time. 296 batting average, over 300 home runs, almost 3,000 hits. I mean, gold gloves out the wazoo. An MVP in 99. Just all around solid player. Played for 21 years as a catcher, something you do not see often these days. I think Buster Posey's maybe on the way to get into like 12 or 15 years or something, but Pudge was catching until he was 39, so ridiculous stuff. Another player that does not need much introduction. Next is the great Michael Young, often referred to as Mr. Ranger, for good reason. I mean, he was a staple of the team for many, many years. Played in Texas from 2000 to 2012. Or was it 2013 technically? I don't remember. Oh, no, 2012. He retired in 2013 after that season, but a bulk of his career in Texas. I think he has multiple hit records with the franchise as well. A season batting 331, multiple all-star games, a gold glove. All-around solid guy. I mean, career batting average right at 300, 2,300 home runs, a little under 200. Did I say 2,300 home runs? I meant 2,300 hits. A little under 200 home runs, over 1,000 RBI. I mean, he is what I like to always say, Hall of Very Good instead of Hall of Fame, because the numbers don't quite add up to Hall of Fame. And I think he is no longer on the ballot anyway. He was only on for like a year, but definitely underrated in the grand scheme of baseball. I think part of it was maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say the longevity because he still played 14 years. And I mean, he had an all-star season at age 34, batting 338. That, of course, that being 2011, so he was still producing. But I digress. And then last, but certainly not least, is the one, the only, probably my favorite player of all time, Adrian Beltre. 21 years in the league, the bulk of the back half being with Texas, of course. And I mean, I could have a whole podcast episode about Adrian Beltre. If y'all know me, absolute favorite player of all time. Narrowly won an MVP is something I always like to mention to people. 2004, he was second, only to Barry Bonds because he hit like 70 home runs. So, not a great season to have a great season, so to speak. Yeah, let's see. Barry Bonds had 45 home runs, but he put up his usual monster numbers, 232 walks. Getting off topic, though. In the same vein, it's kind of like Ohtani and Vlad Jr. this season with that 2004 season for Beltre. You just have a career season, but then the guy you're going against also throws, 5 to 7 innings every week. So not quite a fair comparison. But yes, Beltre is definitively my favorite player. One of the franchise GOATs, no doubt. And that is going to be it for the retired players, the retired numbers. And those guys are definitely ones that should be on the list. Beltre, Ryan, Young, and Rodriguez. Pudge Rodriguez, that is. We will get into the Alex Rodriguez talk a little bit later. But any list without either of those four guys is just not right in my book. So moving on to the top 24 players of all time now. This is based on that wins above replacement metric. And want to reiterate once again, there are a lot better players that have been on Texas than you may be led to believe. But I'm going to do rapid fire, just name all the guys and then point out some particularly interesting ones. Starting at the top, you got Pudge, Palmeiro, Beltre, Buddy Bell, Ian Kinsler, Jim Sundberg, Charlie Huff, Toby Harrah, Juan Gonzalez, Kenny Rogers, Elvis, Frank Howard, Michael Young, A-Rod, Hamilton, Rusty Greer, Fergie Jenkins, Mark Teixeira, Ken McMullen, Ruben Sierra, Julio Franco, Yu Darvish, Pete O'Brien, and Kevin Brown. There are a handful on that list that I have not heard of, specifically towards the bottom, like Kevin McMullen and Pete O'Brien and Kevin Brown. Ken McMullen, rather. But the rest of the guys I know. Some better than others, but some interesting ones are a couple of new age guys, I guess. Although they are all kind of veterans now. Beltre put up 41.1 WAR with the team. Elvis was at 29.8 before being traded, and Yu Darvish was at 18.7. So that's all rather pretty interesting. And then taking a look at the guys at the very top, Palmeiro squeezed in between Rodriguez and Beltre. Say what you want about him, but he put up some darn good numbers. So that is how he ended up at the number 2 spot in the Rangers franchise. Then iconic Buddy Bell. Long time formerly loved player Ian Kinsler, I guess. I don't know how people still feel about him. I know he was not happy with the trade. Of course, another all-time GOAT, Jim Sundberg. Knuckleballer, Charlie Huff. And, I mean, all these guys are just so iconic. Then you get down the list a little bit. You got Juan Gonzalez, incredibly, incredibly underrated guy from that era. And it's easy to be underrated in that era because everyone was juicing, everyone was hitting home runs left and right. And you had seasons by guys like Juan Gonzalez that were out of this world. I believe he was the one that had 100 RBI before the All-Star break. So that's something that you probably won't ever see again. And moving down, like I mentioned before, you got Elvis, unfortunately traded, but it was the right move, I think, although the outcome of the trade is disappointing with Chris Davis being an absolute bust. Frank Howard, that was the other guy. I know the name, but not super familiar with him. He technically only played one season for Texas because he was there on the Senators from 65 until 71, that being their last year, and then was still in Texas for about another 100 games and then got traded to Detroit. Or I'm assuming he was traded. It just shows that he ended up on Detroit and then retired after the 1973 season at age 36. I mean, looks to be all around very solid player, almost 400 home runs. So, no small feat from Frank Howard there. Then, of course, Michael Young, Mr. Ranger himself. Talked a lot about him already. And the big one that I wanted to talk about, A-Rod. There's a great video. I can't remember the guy's name now. But someone did like a 40-minute video essay on all of A-Rod's controversies and all that. Rangers fans probably know him best for having, at the time, the biggest contract in sports history, 10 years, $252 million. Lord knows why they did that. I understand the value was there, but they just, to my knowledge, they couldn't afford it. But that was only the beginning for A-Rod. Of course, he had like 5 or 6 all-star MVP caliber seasons with Seattle. Then came over to Texas for just 3 years and won MVP in one of those 3 years. Missed one game in his time with Texas, which when we get into it later, you'll see he does have a couple franchise records in offense, I believe, just because of those insane seasons. 57 home runs and 142 driven in 2002. 300 batting average right on the dot, and he got second in MVP voting that year. So another tragic MVP situation. Let's see. He lost to Miguel Tejada, who put up worse numbers in my opinion. He had less wins. They played the same amount of games, but less WAR, more at bats, and had less runs. Had about 20 more hits, about 20 less home runs, and about 10 less driven in. I mean, almost everything he is less in except batting average and hits. I digress. I'm not here to defend A-Rod or not. I'm just kind of talking out loud. So my point is, A-Rod, historically, one of the best players of all time, but very, very, very tainted career. As I mentioned, there are plenty of good videos that deep dive into that if you're interested to see everything that happened. Moving on, though, Rusty Greer, most known for that catch in Kenny Rogers' perfect game. Then the iconic Fergie Jenkins, one of the true OGs of that era of baseball. I mean, he had like multiple 300 inning seasons. Unheard of these days. Lots of fantastic numbers. A Cy Young Award winner with Chicago. Rangers didn't exist yet, actually, when he won that in 1971. And then finished out, or rather got through a lot of the back half of his career between Texas and Boston, and then came back home to Chicago to finish it up. So certainly one of the better pitchers of all time. He should definitely be a Hall of Famer, right? Okay, inducted in 1991. Like he was pretty good. Okay, that's all we need to know here. Mark Teixeira was next to him on the list. Another pretty solid guy with Texas. Had a couple of great seasons. I don't fully remember what happened with them. I know he got traded. Let me see here. He got traded to Atlanta. Is that what's going on there? That's what this says. He says he got traded to Atlanta, or it looks like a trade. Once again, don't know for certain. I do remember that I think the Angels trading him to the Yankees is what got them the pick that ended up getting Mike Trout. So, little butterfly effect lesson for you there today. Then moving down to the last few guys, I don't know Ken McMullen. Apologies to Mr. McMullen here. He had a pretty good career, it looks like, so props to you. And I don't know him because he never played a single actual game with the Rangers. He was on the Senators from 65 to 70. So that's why I would not know him. Then Ruben Sierra, Julio Franco, a couple more legends. I mean, Julio Franco played until he was 48. Very classic player. One of those just guys who just grinded it out for 23 years. Not many can say they've done anything for 23 years. Then the last few here, Yu Darvish. That was the one that surprised me. I mean, he did get what, like, apart from the Tommy Johns, he 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish seasons with Texas. I think a lot of that was because his first few seasons were nuts. And then he did have a resurgence in 2017 when they traded him to LA. Unfortunately, in the postseason for LA, he did not do very well because the Astros were cheating. So that's just a fact. I mean, we all know this now. Just a fact. And then the last two guys, Pete O'Brien and Kevin Brown, I just don't know them, unfortunately. It looks like Mr. O'Brien here was on Texas from 82 until 88. Another pretty solid career, 20 wins in his whole, 19.2 rather, wins above replacement in his whole career, 18.2 of those with Texas. Then Kevin Brown was on Texas from 86 to 94. There's a little gap here. Is this Tommy John or something? Or was there a strike in 87? I don't know. But there's a little gap between 86 and 88. So I'm assuming it was one of those things. But there you have it, folks. That is the top 24 players all time by wins above replacement. That was a bit of a doozy. But I tried to go in depth as much as I could and share what I knew about the players without saying things that I already knew. So I hope you enjoyed that part. And now we'll be moving on to the top 10 in each of the main categories. This will be a bit quicker, I think, but moving on. Now we'll be taking a look at the top 10 players by stats offensively for the whole career as a Ranger, not just single season. I do have the single season numbers as well, but first going to be taking a look at how people did in their whole career. And the first thing I did want to explain was how wins above replacement works. I don't know how it's specifically calculated, but the numbers I've been mentioning have been the combined one. It is comprised of offensive and defensive. So, for example, franchise leader for position players and wins above replacement is Pudge Rodriguez at 50.0, but the offensive wins above replacement leader is Palmeiro, and Pudge is actually fifth at 37.9. Then defensively, Pudge is first, so the 37.9 plus his defensive WAR of 21.2 is how they get the 50.0. I don't know how the rest individually is calculated, but that is how they come to the full conclusion. And another thing I do want to mention here is Beltre's top 3 in WAR as we went through. He's 7th offensively and 7th defensively, which is interesting how that managed to get him to 3rd overall. But with that being said, going to batting average, Al Oliver is the franchise leader in batting average as a Ranger at 319. followed by Will Clark, Julio Franco, Rusty Greer, A-Rod, and then Beltre and Pudge are tied at 6th at 304. Oh, and Rusty Greer and A-Rod are also tied at 4th with 305. Then Mickey Rivers, who I can't say I've heard of. Josh Hamilton at 9 with 302, and then Michael Young at 10 with 301. And I'll get this out of the way now. I'm about to list off every major category that Michael Young is the all-time franchise leader in. So you got games played, at-bats, plate appearances, runs scored, hits, total bases, doubles, triples, strikeouts. Oh, well, that's not a good one. Singles, times on base, offensive win percentage. Oh, wait. Actually, that's A-Rod, but I don't even know what that means. Sacrifice flies. And then the rest are not good ones. Double plays grounded into and outs made. But that top part, plate appearances, runs scored, hits, total bases, at-bats, doubles, triples, singles. He leads in everything but home runs pretty much. And that's only because of Juan Gonzalez. Understandably so. So there's your answer for that one. Juan Gonzalez kind of leads in the run production categories with 372 home runs and 1,180 runs batted in. Palmeiro leads in walks at 805. Elvis stolen bases by a mile at 305. Second place on that list is Ian Kinsler at 172. Adjusted OPS plus, which another stat that many people might not know, it's basically OPS, which is on base plus slugging. And then the plus just means it's like adjusted for ballparks and eras and all that. So all that is 155. League average is 100. So he was 55% better than anyone that's played, or anyone on average, rather. Frank Howard at number 2 with 153. I cannot talk today. Probably not a good day to do a podcast. Runs created. Okay, I'm not getting into these crazy advanced stats, but Palmeiro leads in like everything relating to bringing in runs. Juan Gon leads in extra base hits. That's an offensive win percentage. I don't know exactly what that means, but A-Rod 744. I guess that just means like him being in the game and on the offense meant that they could win 75% of the time. I don't know. Then you got some interesting ones. Hit by pitch is Shin-Soo Choo, just because of his stance. Second place is Kinsler, 57. Choo got hit 71 times. Then Sundberg leads in sacrifice hits. Mentioned it. Young is sac flies. Palmeiro, intentional walks at 113. Next closest is Frank Howard at 103. And then next closest after that is Juan Gon at 65. And then Michael Young, double plays grounded into, don't matter. Elvis Andrews caught stealing, don't matter. He stole 305. Best stolen base percentage, though, does go to Ian Kinsler at 80.37%. Next on the list is Julio Franco at 79%. They got some, all this stuff at the bottom doesn't even matter, I guess. But the only other interesting one, really, or two interesting ones, is at bats per home run is A-Rod at 11.9, with second place being Joey Gallo at 12.6. And then championship win percentage added. I don't know entirely what that means, but very, very, very ironic that Josh Hamilton leads the franchise in that at 14.1. So that's your top 10 in the career section. Now for the single season, it gets a little more interesting, and this has the years on it as well. So I guess if you're interested in taking a look, you can look up these years. So some of the list is the same, and a few here and there are different, but wins above replacement becomes A-Rod at 8.8 in 2002. Just below him is Josh Hamilton in 2010 at 8.7. And then the next two are A-Rod at 8.4 and 8.3. So the dude went off. Offensive WAR 9.2 in a season. Defensive WAR, that was A-Rod as well, by the way. which I don't know how that adds up if he got 8.3. Maybe I don't understand WAR. I don't know. Or he was just like DHing all year or something. I have no idea. He could have had negative defense. I guess that is the way that happens. Single season defensive WAR leader is Buddy Bell, 1979. Batting average, I feel like a lot of us do know this. Josh Hamilton hitting 359 in 2010. Highest on base percentage in a single season is Milton Bradley, 2008, 436. I'm surprised Chu's not in the top 10 on this list. Then you got slugging percentage, Juan Gonzalez, 643 in 1996. OPS from Palmeiro, 1050 in 1999. And for a lot of this, Hamilton's in like the top 5 because that 2010 season was nuts. Games played, probably one that won't be broken, but Al Oliver played 163 in 1980. And a lot of people tied for second, including Rougned Odor. A lot of people forget he did play 162 games in 2017. And then at-bats, plate appearances, doubles, all Michael Young in 2006. A-Rod has total bases, runs scored, and home runs in 2001 and 2002. Pretty dominant in the home run department. There's actually no guys past 2,000 besides A-Rod in the top 10 on this list because he had 57 in 2002 for home runs, that is. Frank Howard's tied with himself in 10th place with 44 home runs. I think Gallo got to 40 in 2019, so that's probably the closest one in a while. Stolen bases. Bump Wills in 1978 stole 52. Let's see. The most recent guy was Elvis, 2013, stole 42 bases. Not a surprise to anyone, but Joey Gallo has the top 2 spots for strikeouts in a single season. And Adolis Garcia's in third after his rookie year. Walks, Frank Howard with 132 in 1970. RBI, that insane season from Juan Gonzalez, 157 in 1998. And I'm trying to see. That's interesting. Leody Taveras is tied for the best stolen base percentage with how many did he steal? 8 in 2020, but it's 100%. So it's tied with Craig Gentry for first in a single season. And I mean, that's kind of the big ones there. So that's it for the hitting. Now I'm going to go into the pitching, which is a controversial area for us Rangers fans because pitching is a struggle. But right off the bat, looking at surface level, there's a motorcycle going by while I'm filming. Looking at that, you got Charlie Huff. I'm going to just read through all the ones he leads in. He leads in WAR, wins, innings pitched, strikeouts, home runs allowed, but this is career. That threw me off. Complete games started, losses, earned runs, wild pitches. Okay, these are not good anymore. Adjusted pitching wins, win probability added, adjusted pitching runs. So he leads in a lot of stuff, which is maybe not something everyone knows. And then taking a look, the all-time saves leader is John Wheatland, who did some awful things. So if I'm thinking the right person, I believe I am. So that's unfortunate. But a lot of these are not even, why would they even track this? A lot of these are just not good. Fergie Jenkins, though, does lead in shutouts, 17 shutouts. Of course, Yu Darvish leads in strikeouts per 9 innings, almost a full strikeout per 9 innings greater than Nolan Ryan at 11.039. And Darvish also leads in strikeout to walk ratio at 3.2, which is nuts. Adjusted ERA plus, base out runs saved, and base out wins saved. I don't know what those mean, but he is good at that, I guess. That's pretty much the gist of that for the all-time career numbers. And going through some of the closers as well. Neftali Feliz at number 4, Joe Nathan at number 6, CJ Wilson at number 9, and Sean Tollison at number 10. Kind of an indication that they have not had a good closer for a while. Granted, it takes a long time to get 150 saves, so not going to judge too much. And then the best individual seasons. I kind of forgot that was a thing. Mike Minor and Lance Lynn were at the top single season war for pitchers, with Fergie Jenkins sandwiched in between them there. Mike Minor 7.8, Lance Lynn 7.5, both in 2019, and then Fergie Jenkins 7.7 in 1974. Fergie has the most wins, 25 in 1974. Mike Paul has the highest earned run average, 2.17, or lowest. He has the best earned run average, 1972 at 2.17. Best win-loss percentage is Jonathan Hernandez in 2020, but I don't believe that was a big sample size. Let's see. He was 5-1, but he did pitch in 27 games, so I guess it is a relevant sample for that year. Then, of course, Darvish leads in like everything strikeout related, except for let me see. Does he lead in strikeouts in a single season? Nope. Nolan Ryan does it. 301. Yu Darvish had 277 in 2013. Fergie Jenkins, most innings pitched. Most saves was Francisco Cordero in 2004. He had 49 saves. And then followed by Joe Nathan and a couple seasons from John Wheeland. Games played. Oh, whoa. I just realized that was a pitcher. 85 appearances from Mitch Williams in 1987. Good Lord. You'd get fired if you were a manager and did that today. There are some couple more modern guys. Sam Dyson with 73. And Sean Tollison with 73, both in 2015 and 16, respectively. Walks and hits per innings pitched, very common pitching stat. 1.006 from Nolan Ryan in 1991 is the lowest in franchise history. What are some other notable ones here? Wow, shutouts. Bert Blevin and Fergie Jenkins both had 6 shutouts in a single season in 1974 and 1976. Ooh, man. Did he win Cy Young in 74? Because there's a lot of crazy stats. I got to take a look at this real quick. 1974. He did not. Wow. Because Fergie Jenkins also had 29 complete games that year. Started in 41 games, tied with Jim Bibby for in the same season. 2 people in the same rotation in the same year starting 41 games. God, that is quite crazy. But that's about it. Oh, here's another insane Fergie Jenkins stat as well. Strikeout to walk ratio, 5.00 on the dot. Ridiculous. But folks, that is the walkthrough of the top 10 players from each category for both career and single season. I know it was a lot of names and numbers and years and stuff, but I hope that also provides some insight into how deep, comparatively, the Rangers franchise is. And the last thing we're going to be taking a look at here is players who have been on the Rangers who are in the Hall of Fame. A lot of it is a stretch because, well, 2 of them are Veterans Committee, and then a couple as well, or more than a couple, didn't go in as a Ranger. So starting from the oldest to the most recent. Ted Williams, he was the first manager of the team, so technically that does count. Then Gaylord Perry, Fergie Jenkins, Nolan Ryan, Rich Gossage, Whitey Herzog, Bert Blevin, Ivan Pudge Rodriguez, Vlad Guerrero, and Harold Baines. Now, I didn't know Harold Baines was on the team at all. That one surprised me. And then, of course, you got Vlad, who had an amazing 2010. Pudge, talked about him a lot. And then a lot of the rest, apart from Nolan, Fergie, Gaylord, and Ted, I don't really know of. And I don't even know, like, if Gaylord Perry was even on. I mean, I'm assuming, okay, he had to. Yeah, he was on there in 75, 76, and 77, and then again in 1980. I forgot how pretty solid he was. I mean, obviously Hall of Famer. Everyone on this list is going to be solid, but this is probably the shortest segment of the podcast here because I don't really have much to say. I just thought it would be interesting to let y'all know who all has gotten in, who was on the Rangers, and the highest percentage was Ted Williams, but the person who got the most, highest percentage was Nolan Ryan, and Nolan Ryan also got the most votes at 491 votes, 98.8%. I can guarantee he didn't get 100% because of the fact of his walks and his hits and all that, but I mean, undisputed Hall of Famer, so thought that would be interesting to share. And that brings us to the last part of this podcast where I'm going to definitively say my top 3 franchise players in order. This is an extremely tough list, and I mean, it could be interchangeable in a couple different ways, but I'm going to go with number 1, Beltre, number 2, Pudge, and number 3, Nolan Ryan. Now, here's why I say these. First, Beltre, one of the biggest contributors in franchise history. Big part of why they went to the 2011 World Series. Brought in that gritty veteran leadership after coming off a, betting on yourself deal in Boston for 1 year in 2010. And as far as it goes for Pudge, similar thing. Not as much playoff success, but he was on that first division-winning team, I believe, and won an MVP here. And then lastly, Nolan Ryan, the couple no-hitters, just dominating in his late 40s. And, it wasn't a great period for the team, but as a player, he is certainly one of the best that they've ever had. So that is my definitive top 3 list. And if you made it this far, I want to thank you for listening to me ramble about baseball for like 45 minutes. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a couple things about the franchise, maybe some players that you didn't know before, and maybe you got to hear me talk positively about ones that you do like and you do know. So it was fun, kind of mixing it up, not specifically talking about anything current with the team, but, rolling it back, thinking about how the team was. So once again, thanks for listening. And per usual, I'm going to plug my SeatGeek code. It is TX Rangers. Save yourself $20 on a purchase from SeatGeek. You can go to not a baseball game. You can go to a football game, concert, basketball, soccer, anything you want to see. It's on SeatGeek. So once again, that code is TX Rangers. And with that being said, please let me know if y'all want to hear any specific topics going forward on the podcast. Be sure to check out the Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all my social medias. You just look up Texas Rangers Fanatics and it will show up. And I appreciate y'all listening. And I will talk to y'all later.